Welcome back to the third and final video in our 3-video series titled, Why Can It Be So Difficult to Really Love Like We Mean It? In the first video, we looked at the what. What is it that's causing so many of us a problem in our relationships? And we talked about how it's an unconscious fear, a fear that many of us aren't aware of, a fear of our emotions that's making it difficult for us to really have the relationships we'd like to have. In the second video, we talked about the why. That is, why do some of us develop a fear of our emotions? And we looked at how that happens early on in life, depending on how our caregivers respond to our emotions, our needs, and our desires. And now, in this third video, we're going to be looking at the how. What I mean by that is how we can deal with this fear, how we can free ourselves from our early wiring and have the kinds of relationships we really want to have. Let's review some of the basic principles. We talked about how our need for a secure attachment with a loved one is innate. It's inborn and primary. In fact, when we're first born into the world, it really is a life or death matter. We need to connect because we're dependent on the care of our parents, of our caregivers. Well, this need to connect and feel close and feel safe and secure in relationship persists throughout our lives. And as adults and as children, any sign of potential loss or connection can stir fear in us. That's just how it goes. If we sense that something is awry, our attachment system gets activated and our needs for safe connection come online, and we do what we need to do. That is, we respond emotionally to make things better. That's just how we're wired. But for those of us who had early experiences in life that caused us to fear our emotions and the expression of our feelings, our needs, and our desires, what we would use in order to navigate these experiences in our relationships, we react to them as though they're dangerous. And that's how we get into trouble. Emotions begin to stir in us, and without us knowing it, our nervous system gets activated, and for better or worse, we respond to our feelings as our early history conditioned us to respond. We don't realize a few things. One, that we've gotten triggered, that some kind of emotional hot button has been pushed, and we don't realize that our old programming kicks in and starts to run the show. We just do what we do. We get so swept up in our reaction that we can't see what's actually going on. We don't notice or understand our emotional dynamics, what's wired in, what's happening for us, what's driving our emotional experience. But if we're going to be able to turn things around, we need to. We need to become aware of what's happening inside of us and disentangle ourselves from our early conditioning so that we can develop healthier ways of being with our partners. And that's what this video is about, the how we go about doing that. In order for us to disentangle ourselves from our past programming and be able to develop healthier ways of engaging with our partners, we need to start to pay attention to what's going on inside of us. We need to attend to our inner experience and learn how to work with it. In short, we need to develop what I call emotional mindfulness. Let me talk to you about what that means. Now, I'm imagining that many of you know about Mindfulness. So let's start there. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is all about paying attention to our present moment experience in an accepting and non-judgmental manner. It involves actively focusing on our unfolding experience as it's happening. So sensing, observing, and allowing without having to change anything or without having to respond to what's happening in any particular way. There are many benefits to mindfulness that are crucial to our relationship experience. When we're mindful, when we practice mindfulness, we strengthen our capacity for focused attention. So our capacity to focus in on what's important. It increases our conscious awareness. So many of the things that we've been talking about, our early wiring, our defenses, are getting triggered, can happen outside of our awareness. And when that happens, we don't have any control over them. Mindfulness helps us see that all experience really is transient and constantly changing. If we face and stay present to our emotional experience, we find out that it eventually passes. Being mindful actually helps us move through our experiences in a more balanced way and to get to a better place. In the doing, it frees us from being wedded to the past and worrying about the future, and enables us to be more wholly present and engaged in the here and now. That's where our power is. By disentangling ourselves from the static that gets caused in our nervous system by our early programming, we can come more fully to the present moment, and we have more options. Mindfulness also gets the different regions of our brain working together. So the emotion part of our brain, or the emotional part of our brain, and the thinking part of our brain, for instance, they come together. Both are important, and we can utilize them on our behalf. Practicing mindfulness leads to greater self-awareness and emotional flexibility. Both are crucial to our relationship health. Being more aware of what's happening inside of us, more aware of our patterns, more aware of our feelings, and having emotional flexibility, being able to respond differently, really is a path toward health. Our range of options broaden, and then we can make wiser choices in our relationships, how we want to respond, how we want to be with our partners. We can make choices that are more aligned with our truth and more aligned with how we want to be. Now, mindfulness is not about achieving some detached way of being. That's really not it at all. Mindfulness is really about finding a healthy balance between experiencing and observing what's happening for us without getting pulled too far in any one direction. We call this stance, this balanced stance, participatory observation. So we can both participate as well as observe what's happening for us. When we're mindful, we can both feel and see more clearly what we're experiencing inside and how we're inclined to react with our partners. We can see how we're inclined to react, but not have to follow through on that. We can create some space and choose how to respond. Choose how to respond to our feelings and how to respond to our partners. When we're mindful, we can more readily recognize when we've been triggered. We can manage our emotional experience without being forced to play out old conditioning, old patterns of responding that are really no longer helpful to us. In short, we can get ourselves unhooked, and that really is the key. Now, emotional mindfulness, that I mentioned to you is really mindfulness with an emphasis on our emotions. Remember, our early wiring shows up in the ways in which we respond or don't respond to our feelings. But we're often not aware that we're having feelings or responding to them in unhelpful ways. So, through emotional mindfulness, we begin to attend to our experience and become more aware of what's going on inside of us. We make conscious what was once an unconscious process. We grow our awareness of our feelings, and we grow our capacity to abide and work constructively with them. In the doing, we become better able to manage our feelings, better able to regulate our distress. We can more objectively see and respond to what's happening within us and before us and between us with our partners. We can free ourselves up to develop new ways of relating to ourselves and to our partners. That's what we want. Really, we can love and be loved like we mean it when we practice emotional mindfulness. So how do we develop the skills, the capacity for emotional mindfulness? Well, some of you may meditate. Maybe you have a daily meditation practice. That's great. Meditating helps to build our mindfulness skills. But practicing emotional mindfulness can be done anytime, anywhere. You don't have to set aside the time and have a specific practice. We can be practicing mindfulness, like I said, at any time. Practicing emotional mindfulness. In fact, research shows that repeated experiences in small doses, what we might say little and often, builds strong neural pathways in our brains. If you think about it, all the habits or the things we do habitually, that's how we did it, little and often over time. Well, we can be practicing emotional mindfulness little and often and growing our capacity and growing the strength. By repeatedly taking a few moments throughout our day, often, and turning our attention inward and attending to our emotional experience helps to build our emotional mindfulness circuitry. We turn inside, we notice, we sense, and we pay attention to what's happening for us emotionally inside. So now I'm going to tell you about a proven 4-step program that I teach people every day to help them build their capacity for emotional mindfulness. And for our purposes, for being able to love like we mean it, the 4 steps are all about being more emotionally mindful in our relationships. The 4 steps are designed to help us better navigate our emotional experience with our partners. The 4 steps are: Step 1, recognize and name. Step 2, stop, drop, and stay. Step 3, pause and reflect. And step 4, mindfully relate. So now I'm going to tell you about each one. We start with step 1, recognize and name. Step 1 is all about cultivating our awareness and our ability to observe our present moment experience. Our main goal in step 1 is to become more mindful of the times when we get triggered in relationship, when an emotional hot button gets pushed and our old programming takes over. We can't change something that we're not aware of. We need to be able to see what's happening for us emotionally when it's occurring. We need to be able to recognize when we've been triggered and label it as such. Hence, recognize and name. when we can recognize it, when we can identify what's happening for us, we can then do something about it. As the saying goes, we need to name it so we can tame it. Step 2 is called stop, drop, and stay. And it's all about learning to abide with our emotional experience. Most of us don't have a lot of practice with just being present with and working with our emotional experience in a mindful, regulated way. So our main task in stop, drop, and stay is to stop, drop inside ourselves, and stay with our experience. Our main goal is to just put our defenses aside, focus inward, and learn to stay present to what's going on inside of us. When we're triggered, our early conditioning takes over and it starts to distort how we're seeing things, our perceptions, and it starts to control our behavior. But if we slow down, if we stop, if we drop, and we stay present to our feelings, we're less controlled by the past, and we can abide with our experience and work through them. And the more that we learn to stay present to our experience, the less reactive we're going to be. The more that we stop, drop, and stay with our experience, our feelings then become more manageable and we can make better use of them. And in the doing, our programming, our software gets updated. So we come to have a friendlier response to our feelings, needs, and desires. Step 3 is called pause and reflect. We've recognized what we're doing, we've slowed down, gone inside, and worked to stay present to our emotional experience, and have gotten ourselves to a different place. Now what we need to do is pause and reflect so that we can make sense of our experience and listen to what it's telling us or trying to tell us. So we need to take some time to reflect on our experience and make sense out of it. This way we can understand our emotional experience better, we can listen to our feelings, and listen to the wisdom that is inherent in our core emotional experience. And in doing so, we then can figure out the best way to respond to our partners, the best way to move forward. When we reflect on our emotional experience, we're actually engaging in a process that links different parts of our brain together and gets us, our brain, working in a more integrated fashion and consolidates the new information, consolidates what we've learned, and integrates that into our memory system. So really what we're doing is actually downloading our updates. We're rewriting our software. But doing that takes time and intention and attention. So we need to pause and spend some time with our experience reflecting on it. Step 4 is called mindfully relate. Step 4 is all about making good use of our feelings. We've done all this work to get ourselves to this place. Now, what do we want to do with our emotional experience? It's all about making good use of and benefiting from our emotions in our relationship. So constructively engaging with our partners and putting our feelings, needs, and desires to good use. Now, I know this step can feel challenging because most of the work we've been doing thus far has been internally. And this part requires that we take a risk, that we open up and share sides of ourselves that our old programming told us that we shouldn't, that it was dangerous to do so, sides of us that we once learned to hide. But we can learn to manage our fear so that we can stay engaged in a healthy and productive way. And we do that by practicing the skills of emotional mindfulness, all the skills that we learn by practicing the 4 steps. So the 4 steps can be used in a few different ways. One way is an ongoing way, and that is by practicing the 4 steps when we need them. Times that we need to be mindful, times that we need to stop, drop, and stay with our experience, times when we need to pause and reflect, and times when we need to engage mindfully with our partner. Now, we may be doing all of those, and we may be doing 1, 2, 3, or 4. The other way in which we can make use of the 4 steps is right in the moment, to be able to recognize when we've gotten triggered, to slow things down, and begin to engage with our partners in a more mindful way. So it can be immediate, and we can also take the time. The 4 steps in developing emotional mindfulness is an ongoing process. And we can take the time away from our partners if we need to stop, drop, and stay and work through our emotional experience, to reflect on what's happening for us and make better sense of it, and then come back to our partners and try relating in a different way. By facing our fears and seeing our way through to the other side, we can begin to leave the past behind and develop a more loving connection with our partners. We can have the kinds of new experiences that will update our old programming and rewire our brain to support our relationship health. That's what happens for us when we're mindful. That's what happens when we work the 4 steps. We learn how to feel, deal, and relate mindfully in our relationships. Instead of letting our defenses lead the way, we can bring our authentic self forward. Instead of acting out our feelings, we can be open and direct. Instead of getting overwhelmed or shutting down, we can take risks and do things differently. We can find a way to show the sides of ourselves we once learned to hide. We can express what we really feel, need, and want, and be emotionally present for our partners. In short, we can love like we really mean it. That's the way toward health. That's the way toward having the relationships we really want. I wrote my book, Loving Like You Mean It, to help you do just that. In the book, I go into much greater depth about our experience, about the what, the why. And the main part of the book is the how, the 4 steps. The book is filled with exercises to help you to find your way down the path toward healthier relationships with your partner. My wish for you in reading and practicing what I teach in Loving Like You Mean It is that you will come to see and experience the transforming power of being emotionally mindful, that you will realize new levels of connection in your relationship, and that you will find the path forward toward loving like you mean it. Thanks for being with me. I wish you well.